Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God, our King. That is a beautiful verse. It's the fourth verse of the sixth, written by Samuel Francis Smith. Back when that song was written. I got the name right. There you go. It's great to be with you. So many of you I know from even back in the 90s when we worked together on a number of things. Even back before that young man of 33 years old took over chairmanship here in Albemarle County, Rob Bell. And so I appreciate throughout the years our friendship with him as well. And I appreciate the spirit and the vision and the passion that Bishop Jackson has for our country. I share that. He articulates it very well, and I appreciate that. I appreciate a great deal the work. I believe you've been their chairman like 6 years now of the board in Prince William County and the work that they've done. I regret that. I believe it was Ken Stolley that walked out of the room on you, did it not, Chairman?
Well, I was going to name it a name.
Okay. From Virginia Beach back in the day. And yeah, we don't want those people chairing our committees, but just let me tell you, it's not a physical possibility for the presiding officer to have the option that was suggested a while ago in that as long as you're at 2020, the 2020 tide that's going to come to you is going to be the Republican plan, which has some rhinos and some that aren't. Any other plan that would come before you would be a clear majority because the Democrats would have joined up with the Republican to put together a plan that didn't have it. But I share your vision. I'd love to have that, but that's not a physical possibility unless you change the faces of the Senate so that they are a solid majority, and then you can do it. In any event, it's great to be with you. Thank you very much. The distinction, I believe, between myself and my opponents is the fact that I have the experience and the understanding of the process, and I have a record that you can look at and not have to guess. You can look at it, you can trust it, you can have confidence in it. You can see at both ends of my time in the legislature, the Richmond Times-Dispatch recognized me in 1991 as being one of the faithful five that did battle with Belials and with Governor Wilder in their tax and spend and expansion of government efforts. And then more recently, they said the same thing about me being the senior member of the faithful five in the Senate doing the same thing until after this last election when we got a few more conservatives. And I thank you all for helping make that possible. Let me just give you a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Chesterfield County. I was born into a family of 8 children. I'm the third of the 8. I have 6 sisters and 1 brother. My dad had a ceramic tile business, ceramic tile quarry, slate. Back in the day when you needed mechanical skills to be able to float a wall, nowadays all you need to do is just buy some Durock and nail it up there and put something sticky on it, stick to it. But back then you needed mechanical skills to do it. He felt called into the ministry when I was 9 years old, and he moved us to a farm in Southside Virginia, where he began to work with some other men that planted churches from the Tri-Cities area down to the Carolina line, as far east as the Franklin, Virginia area, far west as Danville, Virginia. And we lived there for a good number of years. I kind of became the farm boy. Remember, there were only 2 of us boys, and the oldest one didn't want to be. You know, I had to rush off to the school bus having just climbed out of the hog pen each morning, you know. And you're talking about not wanting to have a handout. You know, my dad had me when I was 6th and 7th grade. I went into the cafeteria 30 minutes early before lunch to wash and dry dishes so that I could eat in the next 30 minutes. And so that's the environment in which I grew up. When I was 17 years old, my dad was already on his deathbed. And I decided to go off to an academy in Lynchburg for my senior year to work and pay my way through school. Dad did not need the 67 GMC pickup truck, so at that time that became mine for a while. But I did so, and I have a bit of a music career. And I was able to travel a bit of the country. Matter of fact, I turned 18 in Hawaii on a concert tour. How good is that? But in any event, while I was away, my dad did pass away. And I found it necessary to return home and go to work to help provide for my mother who had not worked outside the home for 23 years and my 5 younger sisters. I worked in the construction business for a while, even while I was still in high school. I'd already gotten a head start in the electrical industry, the electrical construction area, and that's where I worked for some time. Going into manufacturing and then in the insurance business about close to 29 years ago. I have been since then. If I were to tell you some of the commercial properties I supervised the electrical construction in, you'd recognize them. But I had that privilege. And that's my background. But about a little bit over 25 years ago, I was asked to run for the House of Delegates. And it was kind of several years in building because folks in the community thought I would do a good job with it. So they did. I did. And when I was first elected, there were only 34 Republicans out of 100 in the House. Today, there are 68. They weren't all conservative then. They're not all conservative now. Okay? But at that time, we needed to get to a majority. We needed to make a difference. And some of us, including George Allen at that time, who was first elected, what, in 82, I believe, or was it 83? Forget which. But in any event, we were carrying things like education choice, education accountability, repeal of the marriage tax penalty, welfare reform, things like that that would really make a difference. We knew that it wasn't going to be passed, they weren't going to pass, but we wanted the Democrats on the board so that we could run people against them and hold them accountable for their bad votes. And I remember when I first met Bob McDonald. He was elected in 1991, and I was assigned as his mentor. And he walked up to me and said, "So you're Steve Martin. It's good to meet you, to finally meet you," as he said. He said, "Thank you for all the ammunition." And what he was talking about was going out there and fighting for those things even when we knew they were going to fail because they were the right things to do. And as a result of it, on every single one of them, we've been successful, except we have not gone nearly far enough with education choice and education accountability yet. I was the first, you know, we spoke a little while ago about the rubber stamping of the organization of the Senate. In 1996, the organization of the Senate was held up for 2.5 days because they did not want the first conservative ever to serve on Education and Health Committee. That was me. They did not want me on there. Today I chair the most controversial committee in the legislature. It's hard to get my 8th vote. I've got to have 8 votes, but so we can't get everything done we need to get done. But we've been able to do this last year. I was able to shepherd through all of the governor's education reform stuff. My personal opinion, we need free and open, wide open education choice where the money follows the child. There's only one reason for there to be a public school system, and that is to make sure that no matter where you come from geographically, no matter where you live, no matter your economy, no matter your family income, you have a quality educational opportunity. If you have money in your account and can buy a house in a neighborhood of your choosing, you can assure your child a certain level of education if you want to, or you can afford to go to send them to a private school. You have choice. But there are people that are trapped in failing school systems that aren't educating them and creating a cycle of poverty and despair and a feeling of hopelessness, trapped in a state of government dependence. And we need to do something about that. We need to change that. In 1995, when George Allen was governor, I had the privilege of carrying his welfare reform legislation. And I chaired the ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council's Empowerment Commission that made that the model legislation for the nation. It was the only legislator in the nation to testify before both the House and the Senate on welfare reform and block granting. We finally, on the 3rd try, got President Clinton to sign the welfare reform legislation. Now, in history books it says it's his, right? It took 3 tries to get him to finally sign the bill, okay? And since then, it's been watered down with the redefinition of work, even to the point where if you journal at home, you work, okay? And the length of time of benefits you go into, all that sorts of things, watering it down. You may know me a little bit more recently as having been the person who put the pen and paper and wrote the 2 sentences that became the Healthcare Freedom Act that Ken Cuccinelli took to the Supreme Court. In layman's language, it said, you can't make me buy it and you can't penalize me if I don't. And in legalese, it said, no Virginian shall be required to purchase, no Virginian shall be penalized if they don't. I wrote that legislation and carried that legislation, became law, and Ken Cuccinelli took the Supreme Court. Supreme Court hasn't actually ruled on that case yet. They set that one aside, ruled on the other case. Not that they would rule different, I don't know. But I also, if you remember Senate Bill 1 last year, carried the legislation, Senate Bill 1, which finally requires people to show ID at the polls. Now it's a weak ID bill. Let me grant you that. We've got legislation before the governor right now that strengthens that to require photo ID. But ever since motor voter, no one has had to show ID at the poll. You simply sign a statement saying, I swear I am who I say I am. And the vote counts. Well, the reason we had passed a weak voter ID bill, a weak bill, is because we have a weak Senate. Which is one of the reasons why, or one of my aspirations by 2017, I want you to have a strong, conservative, Republican House and Senate that you do not have to lobby so hard to get them to do the right thing. And that we need to change faces in order to get that to happen. The Holder Justice Department kept me on the phone for almost an hour, really, trying to get me to say something that suggested, helped them to prove that it was a racist act on my part to carry this bill. So after a while I said, well, if you're going to argue that it's racist to require someone to show an ID that you're going to give them for free and replace for them for free should they ever lose it, then you're going to need to tell me what race of people it is that you're talking about you believe is so much more forgetful than others.
That's good.
He dropped the argument. And they pre-cleared it in its law. Okay? So I tell you all this to tell you that I have a solid legislative record that you can look at. The red and yellow sheet, I'm sorry, that's probably going to be the most important sheet of paper you see today. I know this guy well, I recommend him highly. He's let me down a couple of times, but we've recovered. You know, it kept me up too late at night, stuff like that. But in any event, you can actually look at my record, and you can see from a quarter of a century how I vote and how I lead. I introduced this last year, a bill to repeal the corporate income tax. I didn't just do that because I'm a no-tax guy, limited government guy. That's not why. It has much more to do with it. We've got an economic issue in the state of Virginia. Here's the issue. First off, where does the money come from? It comes from jobs that could have been created and higher consumer prices. But here's the big deal. The big deal is the Panama Canal. Its completion, its widening is going to be done in 2014. So much of the stuff that's coming cross country from western ports are going to go through the Panama Canal and come up this way. Virginia already is attractive because we're a right-to-work state and we have a deeper water terminal than anything port than in the south end. You give us no corporate income tax in the state of Virginia and we will be the destination. And the economy here will boom without regards to what happens with sequestration. Not that we want the harm from it. So it's not just a game to me. I have not done what I've done for over a quarter century to curry favor with anyone. I have not had aspiration to run for statewide office. I had to be argued with for about a year to convince me to run. Okay, I laughed at it. But I believe that I'm the one that can stand before you and tell you that I have a solid record. My learning curve will not be so steep when I take that office. When I pick up the gavel, I'll know what I'm doing, and you can absolutely count on me. And I will tell you that someone coming into office without the experience, trying to learn, it'll be like trying to drink water out of a fire hydrant. And that must have struck somebody as funny.
Yeah.
But, so I offer you as that experienced candidate with a solid record that you can count on. I'd appreciate your support at the convention. I'd appreciate your support on the first, second, and third ballot. But in any event, first, second, and third choice. And I stand ready to ask a question. Hopefully I covered everything I could. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity to be with you, and I would be happy to answer your questions.